Dongwoo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the water levels in the hydroponic tanks. The morning sun on New Busan Colony painted everything in soft golden light. His daughter, So Young, ran between the crop rows, her laughter echoing through the greenhouse. She was only 12 years old, but already she knew every plant by name. "Father, the tomatoes in Section 7 are ready," she called out, holding up a perfect red fruit. Dongwoo smiled and walked over to her. "Good eye, little one. Your mother will be proud when she sees these." New Busan was not a rich colony. It was not a powerful colony. It was just home to 50,000 people who wanted a simple life. Farmers, teachers, artists, and old soldiers who had grown tired of war. They grew food, made art, and raised their children in peace. The colony sat on the edge of human space, far from Earth and the busy core worlds. Here the stars were bright and the nights were quiet. Children could play outside without fear. Families could build homes that would last for generations. Dongwoo had been a military engineer once, back when the corporations fought each other for mining rights and trade routes. He had built weapons and war machines. But that was before he met Miran, before So Young was born, before he learned that growing things was better than destroying them. Miran worked at the research station on the hill above their farm. She studied soil samples and weather patterns. She helped the colony grow better crops and build stronger homes. The colonists loved her because she always had time to help solve their problems. "When will Mom be home?" So Young asked as they loaded the harvest into crates. "Before dinner," Dongwoo said. "She promised to help you with your science project tonight." They worked together in comfortable silence. Father and daughter, preparing food that would feed their neighbors. It was simple work, but it was good work. Honest work. Far above them, in the black space between stars, alien eyes watched their world. The Vorthak had ruled their part of the galaxy for 300 years. They were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and cold black eyes. They lived for war and conquest. Every few decades, they found a new species to fight and defeat. Krell Vorthak stood on the bridge of his command ship, staring at the data from his scouts. The humans had spread to dozens of worlds in just 2 centuries. They built colonies and research stations. They traded with other species. They grew stronger every year. "What are their defenses?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Minimal, War Marshal. A few patrol ships. Some orbital sensors. Most colonies have no military presence at all." Krell studied the reports. The humans seemed weak. Their colonies were scattered and poorly defended. They spent their time farming and building instead of preparing for war. "Perfect targets. They are like children playing in a garden," said his second-in-command. "They do not understand that the galaxy is dangerous." "Then we will teach them," Krell decided. "Order the fleet to attack position. We will hit 12 colonies at once. Quick strikes. Total destruction. Send a message to the rest of their species." The Vorthak believed they were being smart. Humans were new to this part of space. If they destroyed enough colonies quickly, the humans would retreat back to their safe core worlds. Problem solved. On New Busan, Dongwoo finished loading the last crate onto the transport cart. So Young helped him push it toward the storage building. The other farmers waved as they passed. Old Jae-ho called out from his flower garden. Young Haewon offered them fresh bread from her bakery. This was their world. Their life. Their peace. So Young pointed at the sky. "Father, what is that?" Dongwoo looked up and felt ice in his veins. Dark shapes moved against the stars. Ships. Big ships. Ships that did not belong to humans. The colony's warning sirens began to wail. Dongwoo grabbed So Young's hand and ran toward the research station. All around them, people poured out of buildings, looking up at the sky in confusion and fear. The alien ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had built. Their hulls gleamed like black metal and weapons ports opened along their sides. "Myran," Dongwoo shouted into his communicator. "Get to the evacuation ships." "Now, I'm trying," came her voice, crackling with static. "The lab computer has important data. I need to save the research." "Leave it. Just run!" The first plasma bolts fell from the sky like burning rain. Where they hit the ground, everything turned to ash and melted metal. The bakery where Haewon had offered them bread vanished in a flash of superheated air. The flower garden where Jae-ho grew his prize roses became a smoking crater. Dongwoo and So Young reached the research station as the building shook from nearby explosions. Miran was still at her computer downloading files to a portable drive. "Mom," So Young cried, running to her. "Almost done." Miran said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. This data could help other colonies. I can't let it die with us. Another plasma bolt hit the side of the building. The wall blew inward, showering them with debris. Dongwu threw himself over his family as burning metal rained down around them. When the smoke cleared, Miran was trapped under a fallen beam. Blood ran down her face, but her eyes were still bright. Take So Young, she whispered. Get to the ships. I won't leave you. You have to. She pressed the data drive into his hand. Someone has to remember what happened here. Someone has to tell Earth what the Vorthak did to us. The evacuation ships were lifting off from the spaceport. Dongwu could see their exhaust trails against the burning sky. He picked up So Young and ran, his heart breaking with every step. At the spaceport, the last ship was preparing to leave. The captain, an old friend named Wu Jin, grabbed So Young and pulled her aboard. Dongwu, come on, he shouted over the noise of engines and explosions. Take care of her. Dongwu pushed the data drive into the captain's hands. Make sure Earth gets this. The ship's doors closed. Dongwu watched through the window as it rose into the sky, carrying his daughter to safety. Then he turned and ran back toward the research station, back toward Miran. He found her where he had left her, still trapped, still breathing. He held her hand as the Vorthak ships finished their work. The colony burned around them. 50,000 lives ended in less than an hour. With his last working communicator, Dongwu sent a message to Earth. They came without warning. They came without mercy. Remember us. Above them, Krelthane watched the destruction and felt satisfied. Another human nest destroyed. Another lesson taught. The galaxy was safer now that these weak creatures knew their place. He had no idea what he had just awakened. The news reached Earth 3 days after the attacks. Admiral Tae-ho Kim stood in the war room deep beneath Seoul, watching the casualty reports scroll across the main screen. The numbers were almost too large to believe. New Busan, New Seoul, Paradise Station, Haven Colony, 12 worlds burning. 600,000 people dead. President Hyejin Lee entered the room, her face pale but her eyes hard as steel. She had been in meetings with the Earth Council for 18 hours straight. Behind her walked General Boram Seo and Intelligence Director Kyung Ho Yoon. Show me the footage, the president said quietly. The main screen filled with images from the attacks. Orbital cameras had recorded everything before they were destroyed. Peaceful colonies turned to ash in minutes. Evacuation ships fleeing under fire. Bodies in the streets. These Vorthak, Admiral Kim said, his voice controlled but angry. What do we know about them? Director Yoon pulled up files on his tablet. They rule 17 star systems. Military dictatorship. They have fought and conquered 8 different species in the last 3 centuries. Their technology is roughly equal to ours, but they have more ships. Why did they attack us? Our expansion worried them. They thought we were getting too strong. So they decided to teach us a lesson. President Lee stared at the screen. A child's toy sat in the ruins of New Busan School. A small teddy bear, burned but still recognizable. They wanted to teach us a lesson, she said slowly. About fear. About staying in our place. Madam President, General Seo said carefully, the cabinet is meeting in 1 hour. They want to know our response. President Lee turned away from the screen. Prepare a broadcast to the entire galaxy. I want every species, every government, every ship captain to hear what I have to say. 2 hours later, President Lee stood before cameras in the presidential palace. Her message would travel to every human world and beyond, carried by quantum relay to the farthest reaches of known space. My fellow humans, she began. 3 days ago, our colonies were attacked without warning. 600,000 of our people are dead, men, women, and children who wanted nothing more than to live in peace. Her voice was steady, but everyone watching could see the fire behind her eyes. The Vorthak believe they have taught us a lesson. They think we will run back to Earth and hide. They think we are weak because we choose peace over war. She paused, looking directly into the camera. They are wrong. We are not weak. We are not cowards. We simply choose not to be monsters unless we have no other choice. The transmission reached every human world within hours. On Mars, factory workers stopped their machines and listened. On Europa Station, miners put down their tools. On the colony ships heading for distant stars, families gathered around communication screens. To the Vorthak and any others who believe us helpless, President Lee continued, you have made the greatest mistake in your species' history. You have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. On military worlds throughout human space, the response was immediate. Recruitment centers that had been nearly empty for decades suddenly had lines stretching for blocks. Young people who had never thought about war now wanted to fight. Captain Jin Wuhan was teaching military history at the Naval Academy on Titan when he got the recall order. He had fought in the corporate wars 20 years ago, back when human companies still settled disputes with warships instead of lawyers. Since then, he had been training the next generation of officers for a war he hoped would never come. Now it had. Lieutenant Colonel Su Min Choi was on leave, visiting her parents on Earth, when the news broke. She had graduated top of her class from the Advanced Tactical School just 6 months ago. Her specialty was rapid strike. Operations, hitting targets fast and hard before disappearing. She cut her leave short and reported for duty. Dr. Young-Sik Nam worked at the Xenobiology Institute. On Luna, he studied alien life forms, trying to understand how different species evolved and adapted. It was peaceful work, the kind of science that helped build bridges between different worlds. When the attacks happened, his research took a darker turn. Now he was studying Vorthak biology for weaknesses. The shipyards above Earth had been quiet for decades. The great military ships built during the corporate wars had been converted to cargo haulers and colony transports. Weapon factories had been turned into manufacturing centers for farming equipment and medical supplies. All of that changed in a single day. Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck of Shipyard 7, watching workers swarm over the hull of the dreadnought Righteous Fury. The ship had carried families to new homes just last month. Now crews were ripping out passenger compartments and installing weapon systems. How long? He asked the chief engineer. 6 months for full combat conversion of the Dreadnought-class ships. 3 months for the cruisers. We're working around the clock. Not fast enough. Sir, with respect, we're doing the impossible already. These ships weren't designed to be warships anymore. Admiral Kim nodded. I understand. Do whatever you need to do. The President has given us unlimited resources. That was true. Every defense contractor in human space was working at maximum capacity. Projects that had been canceled years ago were suddenly funded again. Experimental weapons that had been deemed too expensive were now priorities. In a secret facility on Ganymede, military engineers worked on something called Project Nightfall. The details were classified, but rumors said it involved new types of stealth technology. Ships that could become invisible, weapons that could strike without warning. On the moon, Dr. Young-Sik Nam studied captured Vorthak technology. A few pieces had been recovered from raids on human trade routes years ago. Back then, nobody had cared much about understanding it. Now, every circuit and every metal sample might hold the key to victory. Their energy shields work differently from ours, he told Admiral Kim during a briefing. They're more efficient, but they have a specific frequency that makes them vulnerable to certain types of interference. Can we exploit that? Give me time and resources, and yes, time and resources. That was what everyone needed. Time to build ships, time to train soldiers, time to prepare for a war that nobody had wanted but everybody now knew was coming. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched the human response with growing concern. The Altrurian Trade Federation had always considered humans to be junior partners in galactic affairs. Peaceful but not particularly dangerous. Now they were not so sure. Ambassador Kivrel of the Crystalline Collective sent urgent reports back to her homeworld. The humans are not behaving as expected. Most species that suffer such losses either surrender or retreat. The humans are doing neither. They are preparing for total war. On New Busan, in the ruins of the research station, something moved in the rubble. Dongwu Park crawled out from under the collapsed roof, his wife's body cradled in his arms. He had stayed with her until the end, holding her hand as the colony burned around them. Somehow he had survived. A human rescue ship found him 3 days later, half dead but still breathing. As they loaded him onto a medical transport, he whispered the same words over and over. Remember us. Remember what they did to us. The rescue team promised they would remember. Everyone would remember. When Dongwu was strong enough to travel, they brought him to Earth, to a secret facility where engineers were working on new weapons. Weapons designed specifically to fight the Vorthak. You built siege engines during the corporate wars, Director Yoon told him. We need that experience now. Dongwu looked at his hands. They had grown plants and built homes. Now they would build instruments of war. What do you need? He asked. Everything. Better armor, faster ships, weapons that can punch through their shields. We need every advantage we can get. Dongwu nodded slowly. I'll help, but I want to see my daughter first. So Young was safe on Europa Station living with her aunt. When Dongwu found her, she ran into his arms and cried for an hour. She had thought he was dead. I have to go away again, he told her. There's work I need to do. To fight the bad aliens? Yes, to make sure they never hurt anyone else like they hurt us. So Young looked up at him with her mother's eyes. Will you come back? I promise. It was a promise he intended to keep. But first there was a war to fight, and the Vorthak were about to learn that attacking human colonies had consequences they could never have imagined. 6 months after the colony massacres, the Vorthak military base at Kepler Station was having a quiet day. Commander Velkar was reviewing supply reports when his sensors detected something strange. Small objects drifting in the asteroid field nearby, probably debris from an old mining operation. He did not know that Captain Jinwoo Han's stealth squadron was watching him. Jinwoo floated in the command chair of his ship, the Shadow Walker. Around him, his crew worked in perfect silence. They had been practicing this moment for months. Every move was planned. Every system was tested. All ships report ready, whispered his communications officer Hayrim, adaptive camouflage holding. Added Engineer Minho from his station. We look like space rocks on their sensors. Jinwoo nodded. The new technology made their ships invisible by copying the appearance of whatever was around them. Right now they looked exactly like the asteroids floating nearby. He opened the squadron channel. Remember the mission. Disable their ships. Avoid civilian areas. No unnecessary killing. Understood, Captain. Begin attack. The Shadow Walker and 5 other human ships suddenly appeared from nowhere, their weapons already charging. The Vorthak base had no time to react. Plasma bolts struck their defensive platforms, turning metal into vapor. Their communication arrays went dead in the first seconds. Commander Velkar tried to sound the alarm, but his command center exploded around him. Emergency lighting flickered as his ship's systems failed one by one. Through the smoke, he saw human soldiers in strange armor boarding his vessel. Surrender and you will live, said their leader in perfect Vorthak language. Resist and you will die. Velkar reached for his weapon, but something hit him with an electric shock that dropped him to the floor. When he woke up, the battle was over. Every Vorthak warship at the base was floating dead in space, their hulls cracked and their engines cold. But the civilian areas were untouched. The trading post, the repair stations, the residential domes where Vorthak families lived. All safe. As rescue ships arrived from the nearest Vorthak world, they found a message broadcasting on all frequencies. A human woman's voice speaking in their language. Your military dies. Your civilians live. Learn the difference. The news spread through Vorthak space like fire. An entire naval base destroyed by ships that appeared from nowhere. No civilian casualties, but every military asset eliminated with surgical precision. Krelthane Vorthak studied the reports in his command chamber. His intelligence officer stood nervously before him, waiting for his reaction. How did they get past our sensors? We don't know, War Marshal. Their ships seemed to be invisible until they attacked. And our casualties? 3,000 military personnel killed or wounded. 0 civilian deaths. Krelthane's 4 arms moved restlessly. They spared the civilians? Yes, sir. The human forces were very careful to avoid civilian areas. This was not what he had expected. When the Vorthak conquered other species, they killed everyone who opposed them. Military, civilian, young, old, it made no difference. That was how you won wars. But the humans were fighting differently. On Earth, Admiral Tae-ho Kim announced the success of Operation Ghost Strike to the War Cabinet. President Hai Jin-lee listened as he explained how Captain Han's squadron had destroyed the Kepler base without a single civilian casualty. Excellent work, she said. What's our next move? The Hydra Protocol, Admiral Kim replied. For every human colony they destroyed, we eliminate 3 of their military installations. But we follow the same rules, military targets only. Why spare their civilians? Asked Defense Minister Park. They didn't spare ours. President Lee turned to face him. Because we are not them. The moment we start killing innocent people is the moment we become the monsters we're fighting against. But war requires victory, she interrupted. And we will achieve victory by being better than our enemies, not by copying them. The Hydra Protocol began 2 weeks later. Lieutenant Colonel Sumin Choi led the ground assault on Vorthak Outpost Zeta 7, a military research station on the edge of their territory. Her soldiers moved through the facility like ghosts, their new power armor making them nearly invisible. The armor was one of Dongwu Park's innovations. It could change color and texture to match the surroundings, making soldiers almost impossible to see. Combined with their advanced weapons and training, it made human infantry incredibly effective. "Target acquired," Sumin whispered into her communicator as she watched Vorthak scientists working in their laboratories. Moving to capture phase. Her soldiers used non-lethal weapons that fired electromagnetic pulses, shutting down Vorthak nervous systems without permanent damage. Within minutes, the entire research staff was unconscious on the floor. "Download everything," Sumin ordered her tech specialist, Corporal Jungsu. "I want their research data, their personnel files, their grocery lists. Everything." While Jungsu worked, other members of the team placed charges on the military equipment. Not to kill, but to destroy weapons and vehicles that could be used against human colonies. "Data download complete," Jungsu reported. "We have their entire research database." "Excellent. Time to go." They vanished into the night as quietly as they had come. When the Vorthak woke up hours later, all their military equipment was destroyed, but they were alive and unharmed. Their research data was gone, but their personal belongings were untouched. Dr. Young-Sik Nam was delighted when the stolen data arrived at his laboratory on Luna. The Vorthak research contained detailed information about their biology, their technology, and their military organization. "This is incredible," he told his assistant, Dr. Sora Kim, as they studied the files. "Look at this neural map. Their fear response is much stronger than ours. And these chemical markers, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we can develop non-lethal weapons that target their specific biology. Not to kill them, but to make them unable to fight. Chemical weapons? More like chemical deterrence. Something that triggers their natural fear responses without causing permanent damage." It was a difficult ethical question. Even non-lethal weapons could be considered inhumane. But Dr. Nam argued that making enemies too frightened to fight was better than killing them. Meanwhile, Admiral Jinwoo Han's ghost fleet was becoming a legend throughout Vorthak space. His ships would appear without warning, strike with devastating precision, then vanish again. No one knew where they came from or where they went. The key was Engineer Dongwu Park's adaptive nanobots. Tiny robots that could analyze enemy energy shields and develop countermeasures in real time. What looked like impenetrable defense to the Vorthak was just another puzzle to solve for human technology. "Target their command ship first," Jinwoo ordered, as his squadron approached another Vorthak fleet. "Disable their communications, then work on the escorts." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the entire Vorthak fleet was floating helplessly in space, their shields down and their weapons offline. Human boarding parties secured the ships and processed the prisoners with efficient professionalism. "This is Admiral Han of the Terran Defense Force," Jinwoo broadcast to the defeated Vorthak commander. "Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. Your crew is captured but not harmed. You will be returned to your people unharmed after this war is over." The Vorthak commander, a veteran warrior named Grok Thane, was confused by this treatment. In his experience, defeat meant death or slavery. But the humans seemed to follow different rules. "Why do you not kill us?" he asked Jinwoo during his interrogation. "Because killing you would serve no purpose," Jinwoo replied. "You are out of the fight. Your ships are captured. Our objective is achieved. But we attacked your colonies. We killed your people. Yes, and for that your military will be destroyed. But you as individuals are not responsible for your leaders' decisions." Grok Thane found this reasoning strange but oddly compelling. In Vorthak culture, warriors were expected to die rather than surrender. The humans offered a third option: defeat without death, capture without cruelty. Word of these battles reached other species throughout the galaxy. The Altrurian Trade Federation sent observers to monitor human military operations. What they saw amazed and worried them. "Their technology is advancing at an incredible rate," reported Ambassador Limco in his message to the Federation Council. 6 months ago, their ships were barely adequate for system defense. Now they can defeat Vorthak fleets with ease. And their tactics? Unlike anything we have seen before. They fight to disable, not to destroy. To capture, not to kill. It is warfare with surgical precision. The Crystalline Collective was even more concerned. Their military advisors studied human battle footage and came to a disturbing conclusion. Humans were not just winning battles. They were perfecting war itself. They are learning from every engagement, reported war analyst Z Prime. Their weapons improve. Their tactics evolve. Their soldiers become more efficient. At this rate, they will be unstoppable within a year. On the Vorthak homeworld, Krelthane Vorthak faced the greatest crisis of his career. His fleets were being systematically destroyed by an enemy he could not understand or predict. Worse, their tactics were demoralizing his forces. Our warriors expect to die in battle, his psychology advisor explained, but the humans do not kill defeated enemies. Dr. Young Sik Nam stood in his laboratory on Luna, watching a Vorthak test subject through reinforced glass. The alien warrior, a volunteer prisoner named Tekvar, sat calmly on a chair while sensors monitored his vital signs. Ready for the next test? Dr. Nam asked his assistant, Sora. Pheromone Compound 7 is loaded and ready. Dr. Nam pressed a button, releasing a small amount of gas into the test chamber. Within seconds, Tekvar's breathing became rapid and shallow. His forearms began shaking. His black eyes widened with terror. Stop the test, Dr. Nam said quickly. Give him the neutralizing agent. Fresh air flooded the chamber and Tekvar slowly returned to normal. The fear left his eyes, replaced by confusion. What did you do to me? The Vorthak asked through the translator. We triggered your species' natural fear response, Dr. Nam explained. The compound makes your brain think you are in extreme danger even when you are completely safe. That is disturbing, but not harmful. You will have no lasting effects. Dr. Nam had been working on these biological weapons for months, not to kill the Vorthak, but to make them unable to fight. Fear was a powerful weapon, and every species had different triggers. The pheromone compounds were loaded into special canisters that could be fired from human weapons. When Vorthak soldiers breathed the gas, they became overwhelmed with terror. They could not shoot straight, could not think clearly, could not function as warriors. Meanwhile, engineer Dongwu Park had finished his greatest creation. In the secure workshops beneath Geneva, he put the final touches on the adaptive nanobots that would change everything. Show me how they work. Admiral Kim requested during his inspection visit. Dongwu activated a holographic display showing a Vorthak energy shield. The blue barrier looked solid and impenetrable. Their shields work by deflecting energy at a specific frequency, Dongwu explained. But watch what happens when my nanobots analyze the shield. Tiny robots, invisible to the naked eye, swarmed toward the holographic shield. Within seconds, the barrier began flickering and changing color. The nanobots study the shield's frequency, then broadcast a counter-frequency that cancels it out, Dongwu continued. What took our scientists months to figure out these little machines can do in real time? How long until we can deploy them? The first batch is ready now, enough to equip Admiral Han's Ghost Fleet. The nanobots were loaded into special missiles that could be fired from human ships. When they hit Vorthak vessels, the tiny machines spread across the hull and began their work. In minutes, the most powerful shields in the galaxy became useless. Admiral Jin Wuhan received his new weapons just in time for Operation Deep Strike. Intelligence reports showed a massive Vorthak fleet gathering at their home system, preparing for a final assault on human space. 37 capital ships, reported his intelligence officer, Commander Ye Jin, including their new super dreadnought, the Void Crusher. It's 3 times larger than anything we've seen before. Crew complement, estimated 400,000 Vorthak military personnel. Jinwu studied the tactical display. It was the largest enemy fleet humans had ever faced. In a traditional battle, his 12 ships would be completely outmatched. But this would not be a traditional battle. Launch the nanobots first, he ordered as his fleet approached the enemy position. Target their command ships. The tiny missiles streaked across space, too small and fast for Vorthak sensors to detect. They struck the enemy fleet's shields and began their work immediately. On the bridge of the Void Crusher, Fleet Marshal Krelgan watched his shield readings with growing alarm. The powerful barriers that had protected his ship for 20 years were flickering and failing. Engineering! What is wrong with our shields? Unknown, Fleet Marshal. All systems show normal operation, but the shield strength is dropping rapidly. Impossible. These shields have never failed before. But they were failing now. Across the entire Vorthak fleet, energy barriers winked out one by one. In less than 5 minutes, 37 warships were completely defenseless. Now, Jinwu whispered. His ghost fleet appeared from nowhere, seeming to materialize out of empty space. The Vorthak had no time to react. Electromagnetic pulse weapons struck their ships, shutting down engines and weapon systems. Boarding pods launched from human vessels, carrying soldiers in advanced armor. The battle for the Vorthak home fleet was over in 23 minutes. Lieutenant Colonel Su Min Choi led the assault team onto the Void Crusher's bridge. Her soldiers moved like shadows through the corridors, their adaptive armor making them nearly invisible. When Vorthak warriors tried to resist, they were hit with Dr. Nam's fear pheromones and became too terrified to fight. Fleet Marshal Krelgan found himself staring at a human soldier whose armor shimmered like liquid metal. He reached for his weapon, but his hands were shaking too badly to draw it. "You are defeated," Sumin said in perfect Vorthak. "Surrender and you will be treated well. You are just one soldier. I am a fleet marshal of the Vorthak Empire. Look around you." Krelgan turned and saw that his entire bridge crew was on the floor, unconscious but breathing. Human soldiers stood at every station, their weapons ready but not firing. "Your fleet is captured," Sumin continued. "Your shields are down. Your weapons are offline. Your war is over." The psychological impact of the victory was enormous. The Vorthak's most powerful fleet, the force they had been gathering for their final assault on humanity, had been defeated without firing a shot. 400,000 of their best warriors were now prisoners. But as promised, the human prisoners were treated well. They were given medical care, good food, and comfortable quarters. No torture, no executions, no revenge. This treatment confused many Vorthak soldiers. They had expected death or slavery. Instead, they found themselves in clean facilities with human guards who spoke their language and understood their customs. "Why do you treat us so well?" asked Captain Vorket, a Vorthak fighter pilot. His human guard, Sergeant Hyojin, considered the question. "Because you are not our enemy. Your leaders are our enemy. You are just soldiers following orders. But we killed your people. We destroyed your colonies." "Yes. And for that, your military will be destroyed and your leaders will face justice. But you personally did not make the decision to attack us." This distinction was difficult for Vorthak minds to understand. In their culture, all members of an enemy species were legitimate targets. The humans seemed to separate individuals from their governments. News of the fleet's capture spread throughout the galaxy. The Altrurian Trade Federation called an emergency session to discuss the implications. "The humans have defeated the most powerful military force in this sector," reported defense analyst Cruvel. "Their technology appears to be advancing at an exponential rate." "What are their intentions?" asked the Federation president. "Unknown. They claim to be fighting only in response to the colony attacks, but their military capability now exceeds that of any known species." The Crystalline Collective was even more alarmed. Their war computers had run thousands of simulations, and everyone showed the same result. Humans were becoming unstoppable. "They adapt too quickly," reported Prime War Mind Izak. "Every battle teaches them new techniques. Every victory makes them stronger. At current rates of improvement, they will be capable of conquering the entire galaxy within 2 years. Do they show signs of aggressive expansion? No, that is what makes them so dangerous. They appear to have no interest in conquest, only in the complete destruction of Vorthak military power. This suggests they are capable of perfect strategic focus." On the Vorthak homeworld, Krelthane Vorthak faced the end of his career and possibly his life. His greatest fleet was captured. His military bases were being destroyed one by one. His species faced total defeat. But the humans had not attacked civilian targets. Vorthak cities were untouched. Trade continued. Families went about their daily lives. Only military installations were being systematically eliminated. "They are not trying to exterminate us," his civilian advisor, Yelkor, pointed out. "They are only destroying our ability to make war." "That is even worse," Krelthane replied. "If they wanted to kill us all, we could understand their motives. But this surgical destruction of only our military power, it suggests they are planning something else. What do you think they want?" Krelthane studied the tactical displays showing human fleet movements. Their ships now controlled most of the space around the Vorthak homeworld. They could attack at any time, but they did not. "I think they want us to surrender," he said quietly. "Not to die, but to surrender completely." "Is that not what conquest usually requires?" "No. Conquest requires the submission of the defeated. But the humans seem to want something different. They want us to choose to stop fighting." It was a strange concept. In Vorthak culture, War ended only when one side was completely destroyed. The idea of voluntary surrender was almost incomprehensible, but with each passing day it became more clear that the Vorthak had no other option. Their military was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they could not match or even understand. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. They combined overwhelming technological superiority with surgical precision and unexpected mercy. They destroyed their enemy's ability to fight while preserving their ability to live. 1 year after the colony attacks, Admiral Tae-ho Kim's fleet arrived at the Vorthak homeworld. The massive human armada hung in space like a steel constellation, their ships dark against the stars. Every orbital defense platform around the planet was destroyed. Every military vessel was captured or eliminated. The Vorthak homeworld was completely defenseless. On the surface, billions of Vorthak civilians looked up at the night sky and saw human ships where their own navy used to patrol. They waited for the bombardment to begin, for the plasma bolts that would turn their cities to ash, just as they had done to human colonies. But the bombardment never came. Instead, President Hyejin Lee's voice filled every communication channel on the planet. Her words were translated into perfect Vorthak, spoken with respect but absolute authority. "People of the Vorthak Empire," she began, "1 year ago your leaders attacked our colonies without warning. They killed 600,000 innocent people, men, women, and children who had never done you harm. In the capital city of Vorkalan, Krelthane Vorthak listened to the broadcast from his command bunker. Around him, his few remaining advisors waited in silence. Your military has been defeated," President Lee continued. "Your fleets are captured. Your weapons are destroyed. You are now completely at our mercy." Krelthane closed his eyes. This was the moment he had dreaded, the moment when the humans would take their revenge for the colonies. "But we are not here for revenge," the human president said. "We are here to offer you something your leaders never offered us. A choice." On Luna, Dr. Young Sik Nam watched the broadcast from his laboratory. Beside him, the Vorthak volunteer Tekvar listened to his president's fate being decided by humans. "What choice?" Tekvar asked quietly. "Listen," Dr. Nam replied. President Lee's voice continued across the galaxy. "You can choose to end this war, not through destruction but through understanding, not through conquest but through cooperation." The terms she offered were unlike anything in galactic history. Complete military disarmament for the Vorthak but no occupation of their worlds. War crime trials for their leaders but amnesty for common soldiers. Reparations for the destroyed colonies, but assistance in rebuilding Vorthak's civilian infrastructure. "We do not want your planets," President Lee said. "We do not want your people as slaves. We want only one thing, your promise that you will never again attack innocent civilians." Diplomat Kyung-soo Bae transmitted the formal surrender terms to the Vorthak government. The document was thousands of pages long, covering every detail of the post-war arrangement. But the core message was simple. Lay down your weapons and join the galactic community as equals, not conquerors. Krelthane Vorthak read the terms with growing amazement. By all rights, the humans could demand anything. They could take his homeworld. They could enslave his people. They could eliminate the Vorthak species entirely. Instead, they were offering a chance to survive and even prosper, in exchange for abandoning the military culture that had defined Vorthak society for centuries. "Why?" he asked when he met with the human negotiators. "Why show mercy to those who showed you none?" Kyung-soo Bae studied the Vorthak leader across the negotiating table. This was the being who had ordered the destruction of 12 human colonies. By any measure, he deserved death. But President Lee's instructions had been clear. Justice, not revenge. "Because," Kyung-soo said carefully, "becoming monsters to fight monsters serves no purpose. We would rather remain human." The surrender ceremony took place on a neutral station in deep space. Representatives from dozens of species came to witness the end of the Vorthak War. Many expected to see a typical military capitulation, the defeated on their knees before the victors. What they saw instead changed their understanding of warfare forever. Krelthane Vorthak signed the surrender documents while standing at the same table as President Lee. Both leaders were treated as equals during the ceremony. There were no victory parades, no humiliation of the defeated, no displays of dominance. "This war began with an attack on civilians," President Lee said in her speech. "It ends with a commitment to protect civilians." That is the only victory that matters. So young Park, now 13 years old, watched the ceremony from Europa Station. Her father Dongwu stood beside her, his work finally finished. The weapons he had built to fight the Vorthak were already being dismantled. "Is it really over, Dad?" she asked. "Yes, little one. It's really over. What happens now?" Dongwu looked at the screen showing former enemies shaking hands. "Now we learn to live in peace again." Dr. Young Siknam's laboratory was transformed from a weapons research facility back into a center for xenobiology. But now he had Vorthak scientists working alongside his human team. Tekvar had volunteered to stay and help develop medical treatments that would benefit both species. "Your fear pheromones," Tekvar said as they reviewed their research data. "They could be modified to help Vorthak soldiers overcome trauma from the war." "Healing instead of harming," Dr. Nam agreed. "I like that better." The Interspecies Research Institute that Dr. Nam established became a model for cooperation between former enemies. Vorthak researchers worked to understand human biology, while humans studied Vorthak science. Both species learned from each other. Admiral Jinwoo Han stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Ghost Fleet was decommissioned. The stealth technology and adaptive weapons that had made his ships invisible were being removed. Within months, these vessels would return to their original purpose, exploring unknown regions of space. "Any regrets, Admiral?" asked his executive officer, Commander Ye Jin. Jinwoo watched as the last weapon system was taken offline, only that it was necessary at all. The Vorthak learned their lesson, though. Yes, and so did we. The lesson was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had considered humans to be peaceful but weak now understood the truth. Humans were peaceful by choice, not by nature. When pushed to war, they could become more dangerous than any military power in known space. But they could also choose to stop being dangerous the moment the threat ended. 10 years after the surrender, the galaxy looked very different. Former Vorthak territories thrived under a new government that focused on trade and exploration instead of conquest. War crimes tribunals had processed the worst offenders, but most former soldiers had been integrated into peaceful careers. Krelthane Vorthak spent his remaining years traveling to schools and academies, teaching young beings about the cost of aggression. His most famous speech became required study in military academies across the galaxy. "We attacked the humans because we thought they were weak. We saw their kindness as cowardice. We saw their mercy as surrender. We were wrong about everything." He would pause at this point in his speech, looking out at his audience of young officers and cadets. "They are not cruel. They are not vengeful. They do not seek to dominate others. That is what makes them so terrifying. They will become exactly as dangerous as you force them to be, and no more. They will match your violence with superior violence, your hatred with cold efficiency, your cruelty with precise justice. But the moment you stop being a threat, they will stop being your enemy. They will help you rebuild. They will treat your wounded. They will educate your children alongside their own. This mercy is not weakness, it is strength beyond our understanding." The young officers always asked the same question. "What should we do if humans ever threaten us?" Krelthane's answer never changed. "Do not threaten them first. They have no interest in conquest. They want only to be left in peace. Give them that peace and they will give you theirs." On New Busan, rebuilt on the same world where the war began, children played in gardens where battles had once raged. The memorial at the center of town listed the names of all who died in the first attack. But it was surrounded by schools and homes and shops where humans and former enemies lived together. So Young Park, now a young woman working as a cultural attaché, brought visiting dignitaries to see the memorial. She would tell them about her mother who died trying to save research data, about her father, who built weapons of war and then chose to build tools of peace. "My mother always said that understanding each other was the key to living together." So Young would explain. "The war taught us that she was right. We just had to learn it the hard way." The galaxy's greatest lesson had been learned through humanity's greatest tragedy. That true strength was not the ability to destroy your enemies, but the wisdom to help them become your friends. And in the quiet colonies on the rim of human space, families grew crops and raised children and looked up at stars that no longer held the threat of war. They had learned that sometimes to preserve peace you must first master war. But the most important lesson was knowing when to put the weapons down and return to the simple business of living. The beasts had been summoned, had done their terrible work, and had chosen to become human again. That choice, more than any weapon or victory, was what made humanity truly dangerous to those who threatened the innocent. The galaxy remembered, and the galaxy learned. And for the first time in centuries, true peace became possible among the stars.